Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most misunderstood and honestly overlooked environmental disasters happening right now in America. We're talking about the Salton Sea. It is rapidly turning into a literal toxic time bomb right in the heart of California. As we go through this explainer today, we're going to peel back the historical record to figure out exactly how a massive engineering accident morphed into this looming catastrophe. Because, this isn't just a story about a lake drying up, it's a crazy story of unexpected consequences that are actively affecting hundreds of thousands of lives today. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to start with a massive paradox. How does a luxury oasis, like a place literally designed from the ground up for recreation and relaxation, become America's most dangerous disaster? It's such a fascinating yet completely sobering question. We're going to unravel this mystery together, step by step, because the transformation of this particular body of water tells an absolutely incredible story. It shows us exactly what happens when human ambition just completely collides with severe ecological limits right in the middle of a desert. But I think the most surprising part about this whole situation is that it's literally hiding in plain sight. Millions of people drive right past California's largest lake every single year, just cruising down Highway 111. You look out the car window and you see this massive, glistening expanse of water under the harsh desert sun. And honestly, most people are completely unaware of the crisis lurking just beneath the surface and along its shores. Because from a distance, it still looks like this serene desert lake, right? The true, terrifying scope of the disaster remains completely hidden from the public eye. To figure out how we got here, we actually have to go back to a completely bizarre historical accident. The Salton Sea wasn't formed over millions of years by natural geological forces, not at all. Back in 1905, the Colorado River basically burst through some poorly built irrigation canals, and it flooded the dry Salton Sink for 2 solid years. That one engineering mishap accidentally created California's biggest lake. And by the mid-20th century, developers saw an opportunity, sparking this absolute golden age. The area completely transformed into a booming tourist hotspot. We're talking Frank Sinatra, the Beach Boys, Hollywood elites. They all flocked there for incredible fishing, yachting, and luxury resorts. People genuinely believed this miraculous desert oasis would last forever. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole tragedy, right? The jarring contrast between then and now. It was once this playground for the elite, the ultimate symbol of endless mid-century luxury where celebrities vacationed and the marinas were just packed with boats. But today, that golden age expectation has violently collided with a really grim modern reality. Those exact same shores are now defined by eerie, abandoned communities. You've got dead wildlife washing up by the thousands, and the toxic air makes it genuinely dangerous to even breathe on a windy day. It is a complete 180-degree flip from a celebrated desert paradise to a hostile, decaying environment.
So how exactly did that paradise collapse? Well, it happened through a very specific, devastating domino effect. First off, without a steady, natural river flowing in to maintain this massive lake, severe evaporation in that intense desert heat began to shrink the sea, and fast. And as the water evaporated, all the salt was just left behind. Eventually, the water became over 50% saltier than the Pacific Ocean, which is wild. Fish simply couldn't survive in that hypersaline environment, so they began to die en masse. And with the fish populations decimated, the local bird habitats were completely destroyed, collapsing what used to be a crucial migratory stopover on the Pacific Flyway.
But here's the thing, the tragedy didn't stop with the wildlife. As the waters receded further and further, exposing these massive stretches of the dry lake bed, something much more sinister was happening. For decades, agricultural runoff had been feeding into the lake. That meant toxic chemicals like arsenic, selenium, and legacy pesticides were quietly, slowly accumulating in the soil. And because this was a slow, invisible process, the danger escalated without anyone really sounding the alarm. The water was only receding a few inches a year, so these heavy metals were just settling into the mud, completely out of sight. It kept the true scope of the disaster totally hidden. Which brings us to a critical turning point in our explainer today. Because the dying fish, they were never the biggest problem. What was hiding beneath that dry lake bed would soon become far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The ecological tragedy, the millions of dead fish, the collapsing bird populations, that was really just the visible symptom of a dying lake. As the shoreline continued to dry up, it set the stage for a much more immediate, invisible, and frankly terrifying human health crisis. So the crucial point is, the real danger lies in the toxic dust. When the lake bed dries out, it doesn't just turn into normal beach sand. No, it bakes into this fine, powdery crust that is heavily laced with decades of accumulated agricultural chemicals and heavy metals. And when those intense seasonal desert winds sweep through the valley, they literally shatter that crust, pick up these poisonous microscopic particles, and carry them directly into the surrounding areas. The threat is no longer contained to the water. It is completely 100% airborne. And we aren't just talking about an abstract environmental issue out in some isolated, empty desert. Hundreds of thousands of people are currently threatened by this airborne toxic dust. We're talking about families, young kids, and elderly residents living in the valleys right next to the Salton Sea. This environmental collapse has morphed into a massive public health emergency, and hundreds of thousands of lives are caught right in the crosshairs every single time the wind picks up. To put a very real human face on what that scale actually means, we just have to look at the communities in the Imperial Valley. This toxic dust is actively driving a severe asthma epidemic. Look at the emergency rooms down there. They're seeing childhood asthma rates that are often double the state average. Kids are growing up relying on inhalers just so they can go outside and play at recess. It's not a future hypothetical. It is a localized, devastating health crisis directly tied to the poisonous particles blowing off that dry, receding shoreline right now. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this crisis is totally exacerbated by a complex web of compounding factors. On one hand, you have the agriculture connection. For decades, farm runoff, which is just full of fertilizers and pesticides, was the only water actually sustaining the sea, inadvertently causing that hidden accumulation of toxins. But on the other hand, analyses from our sources point to massive systemic bureaucratic gridlock. Despite knowing about the receding water and the toxic dust for years, there have been massive delays, endless jurisdictional debates, and stalled interventions. It's basically a perfect storm of environmental runoff and administrative stalling. Let's move to covies and see how this builds, because looking ahead, the outlook is pretty daunting. While there are a bunch of proposed restoration projects designed to manage the dust or refill parts of the sea, they come with absolutely massive price tags. Some estimates for comprehensive fixes are hitting upwards of $8 billion. And finding funding of that magnitude, it's proven incredibly difficult. Meanwhile, scientists are warning us that the lake is shrinking faster every single day, exposing more and more of that toxic playa. If significant action isn't taken, we are facing the risk of an unprecedented crisis that could permanently alter the habitability of Southern California. Which leaves us with a vital question to consider as we wrap up. Can the Salton Sea still be saved, or is this the ultimate cost of environmental apathy? We've seen how a glittering mid-century oasis turned into a literal toxic time bomb, while millions just drove right past it. The clock is ticking, the dust is blowing, and the health of hundreds of thousands of people hangs in the balance. It's a stark, powerful reminder that when we ignore our environment, the consequences eventually catch up to us on the wind. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole new perspective on California's largest and easily most dangerous lake.